Good morning. I'm Eric Blank, and this is the Commissioner's Weekly Meeting for Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. Before we get started, I just want to announce that the in-person meetings are shifting from the first Wednesday of the month to the second Wednesday of the month. It just seemed like the first Wednesday had a number of regional and other meetings that created conflicts. So second Wednesday of the month for our in-person meetings. With that, Commissioner Gilman, any comments, or are you ready to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Morning, nothing else, and I would vote to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Plant?
I would vote to approve the consent agenda as well.
As would I. Let's turn to Dr. Fishaber and Ms. Harper, amendments to the rules regulating railroads, training and incident response requirement. Dr. Fishaber.
Good morning, Commissioners. Pam Fishaber, Deputy Director of Public Safety. With your permission, I would like to take items 1 and 2 together, please.
That'd be great.
So this is regarding rules implementing House Bill 24-1030, specifically the railroad safety training requirements and the incident response requirements. These rules need to be in effect by July 1st, 2025. Which is why we're requesting temporary rules and starting the permanent rulemaking at the same time. The rules outline what's minimum safety training content is required, and the types of safety drills that must occur annually between railroads and local governments with hazardous material responses and those type of incident responses. And then since we're looking at incident response requirements for training, we're also asking to add new rule 7335 on incident response requirements. There are rules in there requiring coordination with the Department of Public Safety for annual training, looking at what local and state first responders need to deal with, and that we're not creating any specific duties for local governments, but that local governments may agree to assume some of the incident response duties delegated by the railroad. So if you don't have any questions, I am ready to make a recommendation.
I think we'd welcome a recommendation.
Staff would recommend that the Commission open a notice of proposed rulemaking for the training rules and the incident response rules. And staff would also request that the Commission implement temporary rules for the training rules and incident response, given that some of the training needs to occur by July 1st of 2025.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Dr. Fishaber. I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree as well. Thanks.
As do I, and that can be an EBC decisioning, opening the various rulemakings and proposed rules. So thank you, Dr. Fishaber.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Ms. Buys, adjusting the monthly surcharge for providing telecommunication relay services for users with disabilities. Ms. Buys.
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Bice with the Telecom Program Section. As mentioned this morning, I'm making a recommendation for the adjustment to the monthly uniform charge for providing services for telephone users with disabilities. The Colorado Telecommunication Relay Services, also known as TRS, supports telephone users with hearing and speech loss, and it is funded through a monthly surcharge on telephone access lines throughout the state. This uniform charge funds the Telephone Users with Disability Fund. The current surcharge is set at 3 cents, and that has been in effect since April of 2023, when it was decreased from 6 cents. The commission decreased the surcharge in April in 2023 due to anticipating the revenue in the fund would exceed the maximum reserves. And per Colorado statute 2475-402, it gives the directive that if the uncommitted reserves of any cash fund exceed the maximum reserve, then the entity that collects those fees shall by law reduce the amount of the fees. Since the surcharge decrease in 2023, there are certain trends that have taken place, which will lead to this recommendation, such as commission staff have been successful in spending down the reserve balance that we had several years ago. We have also had an increase in appropriations from the Telephone Users with Disability Fund. Those appropriation increases include a $600,000 increase that will go to the Colorado Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deaf Blind Cash Fund. We've also had an increase in administrative costs to operate the telecom relay service program because we recently hired an outreach specialist. And additionally, there is going to be a transfer of $200,000 from the fund pursuant to Senate Bill 25264, which requires that the state treasurer transfer money from certain cash funds to the general fund. So with that, unless there are questions, I am ready to make a recommendation.
We'd welcome your recommendation.
Based on fund projections for the next 18 months, I have sufficient data that indicates the fund will not be able to support all of its requirements without a surcharge increase. And therefore, staff is recommending that the commission adjust the uniform surcharge from 3 cents to 6 cents starting June 1st, 2025.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Ms. Biles. Appreciate it. I agree with your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I, and that can be an ABC decision. Ms. Biles opening the proceeding, issuing a decision, and adjusting the surcharge. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, commissioners.
Proceeding number 23A-0471E, Mr. Acera, mission data request. Back again.
Good morning, commissioners. This proceeding is generally about access to customer usage data. It was heard by an ALJ. You denied exceptions to that recommended decision. And before you this morning is a RRR filed by Mission Data. In your decision on exceptions, the Commission ordered Public Service to include a number of unresolved issues from this proceeding in its then forthcoming DSP proceeding. And when this RRR was filed, that DSP had not yet been filed. And so the RRR was told while the Commission waited to see what was ultimately filed in the DSP proceeding. The issues raised by Mission Data are relatively narrow and are packaged in 2 overarching arguments. First, Mission Data argues that the Commission should create a separate customer data access proceeding rather than engaging with these issues in the DSP. The second argument consists of a series of requested modifications to the Commission's decision so as not to, quote, prejudge critical issues. As to the first issue, the Commission's decision on exceptions ordered Public Service to include in its DSP certain information relating to customer data access and sharing practices. Public Service did so, and it appears that any unresolved issues from this proceeding have been raised in direct testimony or can be raised in answer testimony in the DSP. The Commission does have the authority to sever those issues into a separate proceeding, but my recommendation is that the better response is to encourage the parties to engage with those issues in the DSP proceeding where they're currently live. The second issue has 3 subparts. First, Mission Data points out that the Commission concluded that Mission Data has not shown that Public Service or any of its vendors or subcontractors were violating Commission rules around data parity or the AGIS settlement. Mission Data also points out that the Commission did not make an affirmative finding that the company and vendors were complying with the rules. What remains in the Commission's decisions is, as Mission Data acknowledges, a situation where no wrongdoing has been established. Still, Mission Data asks you to modify paragraph 41 of your decision on exceptions to restate the current state of affairs. In particular, it asks you to rewrite the first sentence to state that, furthermore, we reserve judgment on the question of whether excluding rate information or disaggregation insights from the DDS constitutes failure to comply with the terms of the amended age of settlement or violates Commission rules regarding data parity. I recommend that there's no need for the Commission to rewrite its decision to restate the obvious, and therefore that this request should be denied. The second request is that the Commission modify its prior decision to remove the term, quote, energy usage data, and instead replace it with the broader term used in Commission rule, which is customer data. Interestingly, Mission Data notes that it too used the phrase energy usage data throughout this proceeding. Mission Data also requests that the Commission clarify that customer data is not limited to just what is recorded at an electric meter, but also includes data maintained throughout a utility's network technology. Mission Data has not indicated that the parties and Commission's use of the phrase energy usage data in this proceeding will lead to any confusion or harm, nor has it provided any reason for why the Commission would issue the requested clarification. And therefore, I recommend that you decline to modify the prior decision or issue the clarification. Finally, Mission Data asks the Commission for another clarification, reaching back to a dispute about the quality of a data study, the DDS, that the Commission ordered and that Public Service undertook, and which was part of this proceeding. On exceptions, Mission Data argued that the study was incomplete, or that it was so poorly done that it didn't constitute compliance with the Commission's directive to undertake the study. The Commission denied that issue on exceptions, though it did acknowledge that in the next iteration of a data study, it would like to see the approach refined. Mission Data is now asking you to issue a finding directly contrary to that denial on exceptions. It's asking you to issue a finding that the Commission does not conclude that Public Service, the study satisfied the directive to undertake the study. I recommend noting that the Commission is asking for an improved iteration next time, but is not persuaded to conclude that Public Service failed to meet its obligations to conduct this study this time around. So for the reasons stated above, I recommend that you deny this RRR.
Commissioner Goman,
Thanks, Mr. Sarah. I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I, and Mr. Sarah, that could be an ABC decision.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir. Proceeding number 23A-0633G. Mr. Mendelson, our ongoing Black Hill CHG saga.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson for your advisory team, joined by Ms. Dundas of Commission Counsel. At the Commission's last weekly meeting, we presented for your deliberation Black Hill's application for RRR with respect to decision number C250091 in the company's Clean Heat Plan proceeding, number 23A-0633G. In that decision, the Commission modified a comprehensive but non-unanimous settlement joined by UCA staff and CEO, which was originally approved by recommended decision R240784. SWEEP filed exceptions to the recommended decision, at which point the Commission modified the settlement with two main changes, limiting the DSM budget to only use building shell and weatherization measures, and shifting the remaining DSM budgets to BE rebates. Black Hills filed its application for RRR to decision C250091 on March 4th. As a quick recap, Black Hills states that if it does not get the requested relief, it will walk away from the settlement. Company argues the Commission should provide for additional process to evaluate other appropriate changes to the settlement to rebalance the outcome if the Commission does not grant its application for RRR. It raises two primary issues in its RRR. That gas DSM expenditures should not be limited to building shell measures, as this is contrary to the plain language of the statute, and that the Commission should reconsider requiring the company, a gas-only utility, to include substantial electrification. Among other things, the company argues the Commission erred with respect to statutory interpretation, constitutional taking, and what costs are appropriately included in the cost-effectiveness analysis. Black Hills also suggests there is no evidence in the record to support the finding that electrification reduces net greenhouse gas emissions over the lifetime of the conversion, reduces societal costs, or provides for a more efficient utilization of grid resources as required by statute. On March 17th, SWEEP filed a motion for leave to respond in a response to the company's RRR, and Black Hills subsequently countered with its own response, objecting to SWEEP's motion. The Commission denied SWEEP's motion in last week's deliberation. When discussing the merits of the company's RRR, the Commission considered whether a rehearing was necessary or whether an alternative M-docket approach could achieve an improved outcome. Ultimately, it was decided to take a week to reconvene with advisors and counsel before finalizing your decision. At this juncture, advisors and counsel would recommend you focus today's discussion on the specifics of the company's RRR. In essence, if the Commission grants the RRR, it would be retracting the two contested modifications to the settlement agreement. This would largely leave the settlement in place as originally approved through the recommended decision. If the Commission denies the RRR, advisors and counsel recommend the Commission discuss the logistics of the rehearing process, as Ms. Dundas can provide context to the scheduling of that process. I'll pause here for your discussion and vote and can answer any questions you have.
Maybe I'll go first. I suspect this will not be change anybody's mind, but given the parties that agreed to the settlement agreement and where this utility in Colorado are at on developing and implementing beneficial electrification, I'd be prepared to hold my nose and very reluctantly grant the RRR. I just think we're at a very early stage of developing and understanding the analytical tools, vendor networks, measure economics, utility capabilities, and the other infrastructure needed to make BE work. Given this reality, I'd view this settlement agreement as a stopgap measure until we get more experience with public service company and how beneficial electrification can be implemented at a combined gas electric utility. I get that we can schedule a hearing and address issues over the legal standard, the cost benefit analysis, spending levels, and the emission reduction targets. But for me, at this stage of BE development, I have real implementation concerns beyond those top line issues about trying to order a beneficial electrification program that when they implement it under circumstances where the implementing utility believes these investments are so opposed to its financial interests. Given these misaligned incentives, successful program implementation may require a regulatory review of the educational materials, the website, the messaging, the customer contracts, the vendor arrangements, payment timeliness, responsiveness to phone and email questions and complaints, discussions with many impacted electric providers, billing issues, and dozens of other program details. Last week, Commissioner Plant, you said that perhaps the worst thing that would happen if we went down this path is that we'd have a program with little participation. Maybe, but I'm not so sure that's true. Given how early stage this is, I'm concerned we can end up with frustrated customers, vendors, and electric providers that could swallow regulatory resources. So that's where I'm at. But and I'm also worried about our schedule this summer. So I'll turn to you, Commissioner Gilman, see what you think.
Yeah, thanks. No, look, I think those are reasonable concerns in terms of not rolling out a program before it's ready or you understand kind of the apparatus or best implementation of it. But also looking from another angle, the settlement agreement kind of fundamentally fails to address head on a lot of the legal and technical questions and challenges that may have kind of plagued this from the start and will remain if we were to just accept the settlement agreement. So while a rehearing would take more time this summer, I think it is inevitable that the legal and technical issues raised, especially by Black Hills, have to be addressed head on at some point, especially considering that several of the settling parties essentially identify the settlement as a short-term solution that is not really viable, in terms of using DSM only in the long term. So at some point, this issue comes before the Commission, and we really have to address those legal and technical issues, especially with regard to Black Hills' arguments of a gas-only utility. getting into beneficial electrification or being required to offer rebates for beneficial electrification. So, you know, for me, I would rather go to rehearing to actually have out and hear some of those issues to enable us to move forward with future clean heat plans, I think, in a way that better establishes understanding. You know, who knows what exactly results in that in terms of programs ordered for this very first clean heat plan, but I think it would probably benefit the commission as well as the utility and the parties to really come to a better understanding on those legal and technical issues at the end of this proceeding, which I do not believe we have right now, which is fundamentally doesn't set us up in any better place to hear the next clean heat plan or the next clean heat plan. So for me, I'd probably rather just address the issue sooner than later. And I think rehearing would be an opportunity to do so.
Can you help me understand why we wouldn't be better off seeing where we get with public service? I get that there's some issues that are unique to a gas-only utility, but it seems like a lot of this, that taking this up once we're a little further with public service would put us in a much better place to deal with it. I mean, I just think back to the early days of DSM, where you'd never try and implement the first DSM programs with a relatively small utility, and it just seems like we're trying to resolve issues under fairly significant uncertainty with a small utility. So just curious if you have any response to that.
No, I think that's possible. I mean, I question how much of what we learn with public service is directly transferable to a gas-only utility, given that most of the challenges they bring up are essentially around legal and technical issues having to do with them being a gas-only utility. So I'm not so confident it's all directly transferable. I mean, perhaps we learn things about the market and the uptake and customer willingness. But a lot of their direct challenges are not necessarily around those issues. They're around their position as a gas-only utility, which I feel like will have to be litigated and further discussed in an adjudication specific to the utility. So I'm just not clear that a public service experience gives us a whole lot of transferable knowledge here that is worth years of delay in answering key questions around what the statute says and what implementation of this could look like, you know, whether or not that's direct and immediate implementation of certain programs or just clarification on some of those base statutory interpretations. So I'm just probably more pessimistic than you that the public service experience will be directly transferable, especially with regard to the specific challenges we're hearing Black Hills bring up.
Plant, to the surprise of at least not me, you're the deciding vote here.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you giving us a week to kind of see what the implications are. I think this is a relatively new thing that's being proposed, and so I appreciate the time to sort of evaluate what the implications are and what sort of the precedents are, and you know, I appreciate your proposal around, you know, which basically takes away a lot of the investment components that, you know, are not, that just weren't directly related to the clean heat plan. And, you know, I'd be tempted to go that way if we wanted to delay, you know, sort of finalizing as Commissioner Gilman pointed out, finalizing sort of what the positions are for other utilities as well as Black Hills to understand around submitting clean heat plans. That being said, Black Hills has indicated that they intend to leave the settlement agreement if their entire RRR isn't approved, and that would just place us in a place where we would be doing where we would be doing a RRR or a rehearing, you know, in the fall. and recognizing that the summer is a really lousy time, according to our schedule for another hearing. The fall is actually even worse, I think. So I don't think there's any good time to do this, but I would agree with Commissioner Gilman in terms of moving that way at this point as opposed to approving the triple R. I just feel like we have a responsibility to identify what types of ratepayer investments are not only just good. I mean, we know a lot of these proposed things are good, but they don't necessarily achieve the objectives of a clean heat plan, which is what a clean heat plan is supposed to do. So, um, uh, I would support Commissioner Gilman's proposal to reject the triple R and move to rehearing.
So I guess I'm not opposed to more process. I mean, I guess in a way I am, because I think we got bigger fish to fry. But so I guess Mr. Mendelson, I'd like to do this as a TBC order, and the narrower, and I don't know if I'm going to dissent or concur, but the narrower the decision is, the easier it is for me to join it. So if it's just a very clean decision saying we need more process, I'd probably just do a one paragraph concurrence that says I'm concerned about conflicting priorities this summer. But to the extent we sort of lay out more of the concern and try and shape the further proceeding, I may want to somehow dissent or concur. So I don't know if so. Are you guys okay with the TBC decision, seeing what it says and taking it from there, Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I think that's fine with me.
Commissioner Plant?
Yep, that sounds good.
Mr. Mendelson, does that work for you? Ms.
It
Dundas?
does. I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask Commissioners Gilman and Plant if they thought it should be a narrow explanation as well, or since they're in the majority here,
Yeah, fair enough.
how would TC explaining it, Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I guess Commissioner Gilman, why don't you just sort of lay out what you want to see in this decision, so that would help me decide how to orient it. Would you be okay with a narrow decision, just saying, given our concerns about the DSM and beneficial electrification, we'd like to see more process? Or do you feel the need to go into detail on those concerns, which I may agree with some of them, I may not agree with all of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously the specific positioning around, just to articulate my position. I'm happy to negotiate with you about what has to appear in the decision or not.
You don't have to negotiate. You got another vote.
But, what I think would really benefit from rehearing are these specific challenges about the legal and technical issues, especially being a gas-only utility that Black Hills has raised, which are kind of foundational, right, to getting a full and honest assessment of the most cost-effective path to the clean heat targets, or as close as we're willing to go budget-wise in pursuit of the clean heat targets. So, for me, I think a lot of those issues are what I'm interested in seeing, and what gives me the most pause is ensuring we're not just kicking the can down the road and not making any progress towards getting to better understanding the actual parameters for these clean heat plans and the options that lie before each of the utilities there. So I don't know if that's an area you're happy recognizing in there, but at the end of the day, I'm happy to talk with Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Dundas, about how narrow or broad the framing should be within the actual decision. But that's a lot of what I have
All right.
actual concerns.
So maybe we can just list those issues of concern. It's the legal issues raised in the RRR, the cost benefit analysis, spending levels, and by program, and what that means for achieving emission reduction targets at rate impacts. Just something simple like that.
Yeah. I don't feel the need to elaborate an incredible amount past whatever probably Ms. Dundas thinks is necessary in there. But I think flagging some of those things is very helpful.
All right, so Mr. Mendelson, if you can just flag the issues relatively briefly, not try and have us weigh in this decision on them, and do this as a TBC order. I think we got a clear path forward, and I'm likely just concurring on the prioritization issues. So Ms. Dundas, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So what I've heard from the discussion is, I guess, a 3-0 vote to deny the substantive request in Black Hills application for RRR to revert back to the settlement agreement. In the alternative, they state that they no longer support the settlement agreement if the commission denies its request in RRR, and the commission should provide for additional process in the proceeding to evaluate other modifications to the settlement to fairly rebalance the outcome. Black Hills no longer supports the overall elements of the settlement and reverts back to the company's rebuttal position. So it seems like the commission's actually granting that RRR in part to allow for the rehearing to occur. So I think it would be helpful to discuss now what that rehearing would look like, or first steps to that. And I can provide a recommendation if you'd like.
Yeah, if you have a recommendation. So we're granting in part, denying in part.
Yeah. Or so you're granting a request for rehearing because you're denying them on the substance of reverting back to the settlement. So the settlement in this proceeding came in after rebuttal testimony. So we do have all the parties' positions on their respective issues. So that would mean taking the proceeding up at the time, right before the settlement was filed. But also acknowledging that testimony is quite old at this point and wasn't directly reviewed by you all yet. I think that it makes sense to take the proceeding up and generally offer a short opportunity for updates to testimony and then proceed to an evidentiary rehearing, new SOPs and new deliberations as the proceeding carries on. However, for today, we just recommend setting a pre-hearing conference so we can discuss this with all the parties and set out a suitable schedule after that for the rehearing process. I have that you're all available on April 10th, so that might be where we want to start the discussion on scheduling a pre-hearing conference.
Can we hold on picking a date? Or maybe late afternoon would work for me, like 3 or 4.
What about the Commissioner Gilman and Commissioner Plant?
The 10th works.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, can we do it the end of the day?
Yeah, and I was just saying the 10th because that's the insight I had into your schedules. If there's something around that time that works, around that date that works better for you, that discussion could be had now.
No, if you can just do it late in the afternoon, that'd be good.
So 3 p.m. work for Commissioner Plant, Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
Yep.
And then just acknowledging that is setting a date towards the end of next week. We can still do this decision TBC, but it will be a relatively fast turnaround.
I commit to turn it around quickly and would request that Commissioner Gilman and Commissioner Plant do the same.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say that with respect to the TBC order, I mean, my main concern is ensuring that the investments that are approved in the Clean Heat Plan are consistent with achieving the objectives of the Clean Heat Plan and the Clean Heat Statute. And that's really where my concerns come down.
I think you have a 3-0 vote on that statement. All right. Ms. Dundas, anything else for this conversation?
Yeah, let me just summarize one more time. So it's a 3-0 vote. Chair Blank may write a concurrence. giving different reasoning or pointing out some issues. But it'll be a 3-0 vote to deny the sweep motion for response that we discussed last week, and then also grant in part the request for rehearing, deny the substantive issues presented in the Triple R from Black Hills. We'll do that TBC. And in order to kick off the rehearing process, we'll set a pre-hearing conference for April 10th at 3 p.m. virtually in Bonk.
That sounds right to me.
Okay.
Commissioner Gutman,
Yes.
Commissioner Plant.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Dundas. Proceeding number 24AL-0275E. Back to you, Ms. Dundas. I think we're going to be fine with a 40-page limit.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You gave away the ending, but as you know, Triple R is due in the Black Hills rate case on April 7th. Pursuant to Commission rules, they typically have 30 pages for Triple Rs. Black Hills filed a motion to request leave to exceed the 30-page limit and have 40 pages. It states no parties are opposed. However, UCA requests all parties receive the same page limit. So I recommend waiving response time, granting the request for expedited ruling, and granting the request for a 40-page limit for all parties for Triple R filings.
That works for me, Commissioner Gutman.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
And that can be an ABC decision, granting the motion as modified by UCA and waiving response time. So thank you, Ms. Dundas. Proceeding number 24A-0442E, Public Service Company, Just Transition. Ms. Rosati, Mr. DeCenso.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mitchell DeCenso of your Commission Council. Today, we'll be presenting two motions that were filed in Public Services Just Transition Solicitation Proceeding. First is CDPHE's unopposed motion for limited participation filed on March 25th. For context, through decision number C24-0941I, issued December 23rd, 2024, the Commission directed Public Service to confer with the Commission staff regarding the role of CDPHE as a neutral verifier in this proceeding. The company and staff were directed to determine whether a neutral verification review per Colorado Revised Statute Section 440-2-125.57 was possible, and to establish timelines for the overall and remaining schedule. Public Service subsequently filed a notice stating that it had conferred with staff and agreed that CDPHE should conduct a verification. Specifically, the company stated that CDPHE would verify the base portfolio for Phase 1 and would verify all presented portfolios in Phase 2 using the same schedule for verification as was used in the company's 2021 ERP and CEP proceeding. Through decision number C25-0064I, issued January 29th, 2025, the Commission acknowledged this conferral and agreed that CDPHE verify the base portfolio for Phase 1 and verify all presented portfolios in Phase 2, using that same schedule for verification as in the 2021 ERP CEP, and that was a reasonable approach. In this unopposed motion, CDPHE notes that because this proceeding does not involve a verification of a clean energy plan, it is not statutorily obligated to provide additional emissions verifications, and that its verification of the company's workbooks in the 2021 ERP CEP proceeding fulfilled the requirements of that statute. Therefore, and consistent with prior Commission decisions, CDPHE states it will provide a neutral verification review of the base portfolio using both social cost of carbon and CO2 pricing for Phase 1, and the preferred portfolio submitted in Phase 2 using the same schedule for verification as was used in the 2021 ERP CEP proceeding. Additionally, CDPHE states it will remain available to provide additional verification reports should the Commission request them, and will remain available to respond to any written technical inquiries regarding the verification reports from the Commission. CDPHE requests the Commission enter an order limiting its participation as a neutral verifier in this proceeding as follows. CDPHE will submit an initial Phase 1 JTS ERP verification report to the PUC, and CDPHE requests that the date for the submission be aligned with the submission date for answer testimony, which is currently April 18th, 2025. CDPHE will submit a Phase 2 JTS ERP verification report for the preferred portfolio to the Commission. The deadline for this submission will be determined based on the progress and future schedule for this proceeding. CDPHE will submit additional ERP verification reports at the request of the Commission and request that it be afforded no less than 14 days to provide subsequent ERP verification reports requested. CDPHE will respond to written technical inquiries of the Commission related to any verification reports submitted in this proceeding. And finally, CDPHE requests that the Commission grant it leave to submit any requests for additional information or clarification needed, and that the Commission require response to those inquiries be filed within 14 days of the submission of the request. I can pause here for your recommendation or proceed to offering or discussion and proceed to offering a recommendation.
I think we'd welcome a recommendation for this one.
Council recommends granting CDPHE's motion with one clarification, that the deadline for the Phase 2 verification is 30 days after the submission of the 120-day report. This is the deadline CDPHE had for its 2020 in the 2021 ERP CEP proceeding. Otherwise, we recommend issuing an order establishing CDPHE as a neutral verifier in this proceeding as requested and waiving remaining response time since the motion is unopposed.
Commissioner Goman,
Thanks, Mr. DeSenzo. I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I.
The second matter is a motion to reschedule the Pueblo public comment hearing and request for shortened response time filed on March 31st by Green Latinos, Grid Alternatives, NAACP State Conference, Pueblo Branch, Roots to Resilience, and Vote Solar, collectively the Environmental Justice Coalition, as well as joint interveners, the Colorado Renewable Energy Society and Physicians for Social Responsibility Colorado. The motion requests that the Commission reschedule the April 17th Pueblo public comment hearing for a date between May 27th and June 6th, 2025. The motion argues that rescheduling the Pueblo public comment hearing would allow community members in Pueblo to provide comments and feedback to the Commission regarding the final and full range of issues and party proposals that the Commission will decide in Phase 1, and would provide more time for community members to prepare for the hearing and would likely result in a more successful public comment process. They also request a shortened response time of no more than a week. Additionally, the motion notes that the Pueblo interveners, which includes Pueblo County, the City of Pueblo, and the Pueblo Economic Development Corporation, oppose this motion and state they oppose it in part because there is no basis to begin modifying the schedule and that such modifications are not in the public interest. The town of Hayden and Routt County also oppose the motion and state that affected communities should have input on when the public comment hearings are held. Council recommends setting a shortened response time to this motion to next Monday, April 7th, and then the Commission can take up the substance of the motion as well as any responses at a future date.
Commissioner Goman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I. And that can be an ABC or Mr. Sendo on both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Proceeding number 25AL-0097E. Black Hills bill credits on deferred taxes. You do not look like Ms. Segala. Ms. O'Neill.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Erin O'Neill with your Fixed Utility staff. I'm standing in for economist Fiona Segala this morning, who had a personal issue that she needed to address. So on March 5th, 2025, Black Hills Colorado Electric filed advice letter number 883 in proceeding number 25AL0097E to implement a refund of approximately $265,000. This customer refund is designed to return annual protected excess deferred federal income taxes, or EDFIT, stemming from the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, TCJA, in compliance with decision number R200924 in proceeding number 20AL0394E. On March 18th, 2025, Black Hills filed an amended advice letter to correct an error regarding the true-up. This is the final bill credit to be provided to ratepayers because the remaining EDFIT is being returned to ratepayers through the rates set in proceeding number 25AL0275E, which is the company's phase 1 rate case. Following the application of the bill credit authorized in this proceeding, the company will track the exact amount credited to customers and true up any remaining amounts. If the actual amount credited to customers is less than the $264,581.95, the company will deposit the difference into the Black Hills Energy Assistance Program, or BEAP. If the total amount credited to customers exceeds the $264,581, the company will not seek to make up the difference. For context, the customer refund is a result of the Federal Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. Congress passed the TCJA that reduced the corporate income tax rate from 35% to 21% and required the reevaluation of federal deferred tax assets, or DTAs, and liabilities, DTLs. On September 25th, 2020, the company filed advice letters number 789 and 790 in proceedings 20AL0394E and 20AL095E, 20AL0395E, respectively, to implement an annual bill credit mechanism to reflect the annual amortization of the deferred tax liabilities created by the TCJA. A settlement was approved in those proceedings that agreed that it is appropriate to provide customers the protected EDFIT liability according to the average rate assumption method, also known as ARAM, for amortizing excess tax reserves. The return of EDFIT has been allocated to customers based on the percentages from the company's Phase 2 electric rate case proceeding, which was proceeding number 17AL0477E. The settlement also agreed to true up any remaining amounts following application of the bill credits. The settlement required Black Hills to donate based on an interest calculation for the 2018 and 2019 protected EDFIT amortizations to local nonprofit organizations for direct energy assistance purposes. By decision number R200924, the Commission approved annual bill credits for the protected EDFIT. The company has since implemented 4 bill credits totaling approximately $4.7 million in customer refunds. This filing implements the final bill credit. The settlement provided annual bill credits until the company files a rate review and receives a Commission determination of a final annual protected EDFIT amortization amount to be incorporated in base rates. Commission decision number C250183 in proceeding number 24AL0275E approves that recovery of protected TCJA EDFIT through base rates. These dollars are included in the regulatory liabilities listed on Schedule K, line 76 of the revenue requirement model in that proceeding. The impact of this advice letter filing in isolation is to reduce the credit, the current EDFIT bill credit from approximately $6.97 to $1.37 for residential customers, and a reduction from approximately $14.78 to $2.89 for commercial customers. These one-time bill credits will be applied to customers' bills in April of 2025. I'll pause here for any questions, or I can proceed to my recommendation.
If you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Staff recommends that the Commission allow amended advice letter number 883 to become effective by operation of law.
So, Ms. O'Neill, I support your recommendation, but just want to express my deep disappointment that you've added yet another acronym, EDFIT, to our lexicon.
It wasn't me. It's not my fault. I say that.
Shooting the messenger.
Yeah, well. Commissioner Gilman.
I agree with your recommendation, Ms. O'Neill.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I. Thanks, Ms. O'Neill. Proceeding number 25A-0075E, Ms. Rosati, Mr. DeCenzo, it's Public Service Company's request to join SPP Markets Plus.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Wendy Rosati of your Commission Council. Through decision number C25-0213I, the Commission directed Public Service to file a consensus procedural schedule in this proceeding that will allow for a Commission decision within 150 days of the filing of the application. On March 28th, Public Service filed the consensus procedural schedule. The proposed schedule includes that the deadline for answer testimony is April 29th, The deadline for rebuttal testimony is May 16th, and that any settlement agreement would be filed by May 19th. The proposed schedule also includes a public comment hearing on May 22nd from 4 to 6 p.m. and an evidentiary hearing on May 27th, 28th, and 29th, with statements of position due on June 12th, 2025. Additionally, the parties agree to the standard discovery procedures with the exception that some discovery response times would be shorter. Unless you have any questions about the schedule, I can provide a recommendation.
That'd be great.
I recommend adopting the schedule and the parties' proposed discovery procedures. Today's order would also set forth the procedures for a remote evidentiary hearing.
Commissioner Goman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision, setting the procedural schedule and other process. Thanks, Ms. Rosati.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 25V-0123G, Mr. Mendelson, Mr. Davis, gas infrastructure planning.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Again, Mike Mendelson, joined by Ron Davis. Our March 25th public service petitioned the Commission to grant a temporary partial variance from Gas Rule 4552A, which specifies a deadline for the company's 2025 to 2030 gas infrastructure plan. Specifically, Public Service requests a limited variance of the expected filing deadline from May 1 to May 23, 2025. The company also requests a waiver or variance from any other Commission rule necessary to grant this petition. The company explains that this short extension will allow it time to prepare information consistent with the expanded scope of GIP requirements resulting from the company's first GIP, as well as the expanded scope of the GIP itself. Public Service notes that it anticipates the number of planned projects to exceed 50 as compared to 15 in the initial GIP. Public Service also notes that other significant proceedings in process, filing deadlines, and current limitations on the availability of key personnel represent additional constraint to its capability to meet the current May 1 deadline, and that the short variance period will not significantly impact the expected time frame for adjudication of the 2025 GIP. Public Service conferred with the parties to the company's initial GIP application, and the petition is unopposed. I'll pause here for discussion or can offer a recommendation.
If you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Okay. Advisors recommend granting the petition. The company appears to be making best efforts to giving the Commission a robust filing, and there are numerous large filings in progress at present. The extra time appears reasonable and that it will not disrupt the GIP adjudication.
Just one quick question, and I support the recommendation and the variance request, but is there a way we can somehow look at total capital budgets in this process and sort of broaden the scope out? And maybe we need to wait till it's filed and take it up on supplemental direct, but it'd be really nice to see the broad picture of total capital spending, and instead of getting it after they spend it in the rate case and have to look at it backwards. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Mendelson, before I ask for a final vote on the variance request?
That might be a little challenging because it's not specifically in the GIP rules. But I know the Commission is potentially interested in reevaluating the GIP rules. So, but I would recommend not trying to do anything here specifically.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just want to throw it out. Really, just as a discussion with my colleagues. I just think we could be looking at total capital spending, just not looking at it after the fact in the rate case, and it's going to be a fully litigated proceeding, and I think it'll help us understand and contextualize the individual investments. So, Commissioner Gilman, I guess you now have two issues in front of you: a vote and the variance request, and any comments on my comments.
Yeah, I agree with your recommendation, Mr. Middleton. With regard to seeing total capital, yeah, like I agree broadly in the initial gifts, that was clearly an area that was dissatisfying to not have a view of that total expected capital. And so perhaps there's a chance, as the gift gets filed to ask, within that adjudication, if it's something we want every time across the board. It seems to me Mr. Mendelson's on the right track that that's a rules change. And I think we learned a lot in the initial gifts about what was working and what wasn't. So as full as our plate is, I continue to think it's appropriate in the coming year or so to reopen and reevaluate those gas rules to ensure that they're working as well as possible now that we have experience implementing the GIP rules, which were brand new at the time, so I think it's reasonable that there are areas that need to be augmented or changed a bit as we move forward in these adjudications. And so, yeah, I continue to have interest in that, although I acknowledge our schedule, which does not make it incredibly possible in the next several months. But I think that's one of several issues of just things we learned throughout those initial gifts that could probably stand to improve as we reevaluate those rules.
Given that rulemaking would be a 2 or 3 year task before we have modified rules, do you have any concerns if we asked advisors and council to take a look at using this GIP to have a view on total capital expenses? And again, we may not do it here, but since it's on the agenda, I thought I'd raise it.
I think it's something to look into and explore, what we can look at or figure out in this adjudication. It has not been my experience that rulemakings are up to 3-year endeavors. Certainly that's not the point.
Are you saying 4 or 5 years?
1 year.
1
year.
All evidence to the contrary.
Especially given that, the first time we did this was a brand new rule section. At this point, we have actual examples of how this is working in real life, and I think some starting ideas on areas that could be addressed within the rules. So certainly not as large and brand new an effort as creating the rules the first time was, but even creating the rules the first time did not take 2 or 3 years. So I think we could be on a timetable that's quicker than that.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I'd agree with the variance and support your comments.
All right. So that can be an ABC decision, granting the petition and waiving notice and intervention period. So anything else on this one, Mr. Mendelson?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilman, final thoughts before we adjourn?
That's an additional thing.
Commissioner Plant?
Nope. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to both of you. With that, we're adjourned.